All right, guys. So today we're going to be specifically looking at story problems using quadratic. So we're going to be having specific story problems where we're going to find the area or we're going to be given the area, sorry, and we're going to find the dimensions of different rectangles. So before we do any story problem, I just want to kind of make sure we're refreshed on the main parts of an area of a rectangle. So remember, if you have a rectangle, right, you know that you can always find the area by taking the length times the width. So if we want the area of a rectangle, we're taking length times width. So we're multiplying the two together, and then we'll always get our area. It's also good to remember that your area is always in units squared. So let's say you're in inches, then your area would be in inches squared. Then your units for the length and the width are both just inches. So a few things just to kind of remember with area. But the big thing that we need to remember here is area is always length times width when we're dealing with rectangles, because we're going to need that with the problems that we're doing today. So I'm going to go through two specific problems, and then you're going to have three that you're going to do for homework. So let's start with the first one here, where we are going to specifically find the dimensions of a rectangle with an area of 10 square feet if the length is 8 more feet than 2 times the width. Okay, so when looking at this problem, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to draw us a rectangle to kind of help us out here. So I know that I got a rectangle and its length times width to get the area. Now we need variables here. Okay, so and the thing is, when we're doing our equation, we only want one variable. So the key thing that we want to look at here is this last sentence where it says the length is 8 more than 2 times the width. So we want to make an equation out of that. Well, sorry, more an expression. So I'm going to write specifically, I'm going to make my length L. Okay, so I'm going to write where my length is L here. And I know the length is equal to 8 more than 2 times the width. So that would be 2 times W plus 8. So now I know my length is 2W plus 8. So what I can do is when I do my area equation, where I know the area of this whole thing is 10 feet squared, I'm going to use the fact that area is equal to length times width. Well, that means that my area, which is 10 feet, is equal to my length. Now, instead of using L, I'm going to use what I wrote as 2W plus 8. So I'm going to do 2W plus 8 times my width here, which is just W. So then I want to distribute my W inside the parentheses here. So I get 10 equals 2W squared plus 8W. So if you notice, we're starting to get a quadratic, right? At this point, we have 2W squared plus 8W equals 10. Now we want to solve this quadratic, right? So now we're basically at the point that we need to be at to solve this quadratic. But we've got to set it equal to 0. That's the key thing. We can't solve this until it equals 0, so we want to subtract 10 from both sides. So now we have 0, so 2W squared plus 8W minus 10 now equals 0. So at this point, we want to solve this quadratic. That's going to get us the width, because that's what W is. W is our width. So we're going to solve this quadratic to help us get the width of this rectangle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually erase what I have so far so that I can solve this quadratic. So give me a second to erase this. I'm going to rewrite the quadratic up top. So we are solving the quadratic 2W squared plus 8W minus 10 equals 0. So in this problem, if you go through the flow chart you got yesterday, the best way to solve out this problem is going to be for us using quadratic formula. So that's what I'm going to use here. So when I plug this into quadratic formula, I'm finding W. So W equals negative B, which is negative 8, plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 10 all over 2 times 2. Okay. And when I simplify this out, you actually get W equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 144 all over 4. And what's nice is we know the square root of 144 is 12. So we've got negative 8 plus or minus 12 over 4. So our two possible solutions for our width is going to be this negative 8 plus 12 over 4 and negative 8 minus 12 over 4. So negative 8 plus 12 is going to be a 4. Divided by 4 is going to be 1. So there's one possibility. And then over here, negative 8 minus 12 is going to be a negative 20 divided by 4, which is a negative 5. Now, at this point, we need to realize that we are talking about side lengths, right? So we're talking about the width being either 1 foot or negative 5 feet. What you need to realize at this point is that you cannot have negative lengths. So that one is not going to work for us. The only one that we're actually going to use is the 1. So we know our W, our width is 1. Our length is going to be what we plug W in as, which is 1. So our length here is going to be 2 times 1 plus 8, which is 10. So we know the length. Sorry, that's a weird W. Oh. So we know that the length here is 10, and the width is this 1. So if you want to write your dimensions to get your final answer is going to be the length of 10 feet and the width of 1 feet. And that's your answer to this problem. So that's the first example we're going to look at. That one works out very nicely. So in that one, when we do the quadratic formula, we get a perfect square with 144. So we were able to get very nice numbers. What we're going to look at now is a problem where we don't get as nice of numbers. So we've got the same kind of problem. Okay, I'm not going to actually draw it out this time because I think we're good from there. But this time we have a rectangle with an area of 188 square feet. There's a typo there. Sorry. That's supposed to say square feet. I'll fix that. There we go. All right, so rectangle with an area of 188 square feet. And we're going to find the dimensions of the rectangle. The width is 5 feet longer than 3 times the length. So once again, we know we're going to be using the area equation of length times width. We are trying to use this last part here to help us get a expression for width, because width is 5 feet longer than 3 times the length. So our width is 5 feet longer than 3 times the length. So that's 3 times the length plus 5. And then we're just going to use L for length. So then when we plug this all into our area equation, our area is 188. Our length is just the L, and our width is now that 3L plus 5. So then we distribute the L. So we get 188 equals 3L squared plus 5L. Subtract the 188, so you get 0 equals 3L squared plus 5L minus 188. And we now have a quadratic here that we can solve. So let me rewrite the quadratic up here so I can have more room to solve it out for us. And we're going to once again use the quadratic formula. So to help us get the answer to this problem, we're going to use quadratic formula to come up with what the length is this time and use that to help us get the width. So in this problem, when we use the quadratic formula, our b is 5, so the length is equal to -5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 3 times -188 all over 2 times 3. And for this one, when you get what's inside the square root, you get -5 plus or minus the square root of 2,281 all over 6. Now, at this point, you should check to see if you can take the square root of that 2,281. Well, you'll notice that you can't. So what we're going to do is we are just going to write out our two options and then put them in our calculator and round to the nearest 100th. So that's 2 decimal places. So basically our two options are -5 plus the square root of 2,281 divided by 6. And then we're going to get a number there. So when we do that, if you just put in your calculator -5 plus second square root, so -5 plus the square root of 2,281, probably need to close your parentheses and hit enter, you'll get 42.759 ... But then we need to divide that by 6. So your final answer, you get 7.1266 ... So it rounds to 7.13. For your other option, you've got -5 minus the square root of 2,281 over 6. So you'll do the same thing, put it in your calculator, and then divide by 6, and you get -8.79. Now, once again, you cannot have a negative number for your width or your length. So here, our length L is 7.13. So to get the width, we want to plug that in. So we know the width is equal to 3 times the length. So we take 3 times 7.13 plus 5. It's a horrible 5. And then when you put that in your calculator, you get the width to be 26.39. So there's your width. Here's your length. So in the end, when you write your answer, you get the following. Your length is that 7.13 feet, and your width is 26.39 feet. And that's your answer for this problem. So that's all for today. Again, now you're going to do 3 problems on your own as a Canvas check. Make sure you are showing all your work from the Canvas check on paper because I will be checking that. And then that is due tonight. That's all you have for Friday. Have a great rest of your Friday. See you guys later.